Hello, and welcome to the zoominghooskpodcast, and I'm your host, Dustin DaHusky.
And I'm Lilia Roo, here again once more.
Hello, Lilia. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
And very, very Roo-like. Tonight, Kurt Ann won't be with us because he is currently doing a good loaf. He is tired, especially after what kind of happened with him today with his car, and kind of stresses him out. So he is loafing away in bed, loafing. And actually, this is, I think, the first podcast that we've recorded on a Thursday. Because normally these are recorded Tuesday and Saturday. And for the hell of it, and because we can, we've invited Lilia Roo back for more podcast talk. And also to talk about different things as well. So with that, I say let us continue. And I kind of forgot what we picked off last time, but we talked quite a bit about other stuff last time. We can talk about other stuff this time. So today I hung out with an old, well, not an old, because he's kind of more recent old coworker from my last job, the Torpedo, the mythical Torpedo, and we decided to hang out all day because he was getting fed up, so he took 2 days off this week, today and tomorrow, and we decided to just hang out, grab some breakfast at Denny's, and decided to actually go all over the county, well, actually both Waukesha and Milwaukee County, to go antique shopping. So he got a few things, and I got a few things, mostly all camera stuff. And I found a lot of light meters, and I found some expired film, which is fun. I'm going to keep one for display, but I've got 126 millimeter Kodak from 1987 that I'm going to use to see what wacky pictures I can get out of it, and finally get a use out of my 126 cameras because they don't make film from that since 2008. But I bought a lot of I bought some 110 film, which is being made today anyway, but I want to see what old expired film of that looks like. And I bought actually a lot of light meters from different eras. And I bought a 110 camera that looked really, really good on paper. Didn't do much investigating of it until I just got home. And we'll go over some camera etiquette and just technology etiquette because Roo also likes the old technology as well, don't you?
Yes, I do. Mainly, I've been collecting a lot of old computers, mainly desktops and laptops and all-in-ones from the late 90s and the early 2000s. It's something I've always been interested in, but with the pandemic happening, I figured, why not give it a shot? Most of the stuff in my collection is, well, PowerPC based Macintoshes, but I've been starting to collect some x86 based computers.
Nice. And what time period are those computers?
All the computers in my collection right now are from like 1997 to 2005.
Okay. Is there a specific reason why you only collect computers from that time period, or is it just random? It just happens to be what you have.
I collect from that time period because, well, right now, since I don't have a car, I don't really, well, okay, for anything older than like the 90s, I would want to pick up in person, mainly because a lot of those machines can be quite fragile, or I would want to check out the condition in person because of how old they are. But since I don't have a car, and, you know, the farther back in time you go, the bulkier things tend to be, I can't exactly pick that up, put it on my back, bike an hour back to my place, and call it a day. So I've mainly been focusing on late 90s, early 2000s stuff because it's still old enough to be interesting while not being too new as to not be interesting. Now, what's nice about this period is a lot of PowerPC based Macintoshes fall in this area, and I've always thought the PowerPC instruction set was interesting. So it's nice how that all works out with that. Otherwise, now I've been trying to focus on collecting some Pentium-based PCs from the time period, which
Okay.
is very nice. One such machine I recently picked up, which was a Dell Latitude CP M233ST, I believe is the specific model number, has very good hardware compatibility with Windows for Workgroups 3.11, Windows 98, Windows 2000. So far, that machine has been perfect for doing a lot of retro Windows stuff on. Otherwise, for everything else, I've kind of, with the Macintoshes, I like to collect them because I've always kind of been fascinated by the PowerPC based hardware. But otherwise, for these Pentium based machines, x86 based machines, those I've been focusing more on actually getting a use out of.
Mm-hmm. So then when you get older machines, um, do you tend to get them mostly working? Do you bother getting some machines that could possibly get fixed or with software issues?
Software issues usually don't matter on the machines, since the first thing I do when I get a machine is wipe it and put my own stuff on it, both to ensure I have a working setup and also to protect the previous owner's privacy. Otherwise, when I'm uh, picking up machines, whether locally or off of eBay, I try to ensure that the machine is in good condition.
Okay.
Then usually after that, I try to touch them up, try to make the exterior look better, upgrade some of the hardware, usually the RAM, because the stock amount of RAM is usually not enough for anything I want to do.
It's kind of laughable back then.
Yeah, like for example, the tray loading iMac G3 I have from 1998 came with the stock 32 megabytes of RAM, which when you just load Mac OS 9 on, that is already taking up 3/4 of it. You try to run any program and you have the hard disk constantly churning as it needs to swap out memory into the swap area to make space. That is now sitting at a comfortable 384 megabytes, 12 times the space, and you can actually comfortably do stuff on it now.
That's pretty cool. So then you're pretty much up. So you pretty much do upgrades on components with the best possible quality at that time. So you're
Yeah,
trying to pretty much maximize the best of what's out there onto a pre-existing machine, and it's kind of plug and play.
yeah. Now, I usually tend to leave if the hard disks still work, which thankfully most of the machines I haven't need to replace the storage, but usually I keep the hard disks in unless it's a laughably small capacity, mainly because you don't really have the complete old computer experience without a loud grinding hard disk
Oh yeah.
constantly going. Well, that's not the noise, but
So then it makes computer noises.
yes. But otherwise, I try to upgrade the RAM so I can actually do stuff on there, and also in the case of when I can actually upgrade the other components in the machine, I usually try to max those out as well, or if there's expansion slots, I try to get stuff for that. Like the Dell Latitude CP, I have some PC cards for, which are nice, so I can get it Ethernet access and additional USB ports.
So are these extra components, are they easy to find today?
Surprisingly, yes, especially if you're looking for RAM or old PC card stuff on eBay. RAM reigns like rain.
Hmm.
Uh, any kind of RAM, like if you just want, DDR4, DDR3, DDR2, something that's not DDR, PC 100 RAM, basically any type of RAM on eBay I've been able to get for cheap and Most of the time, I haven't had a problem once it arrives. There's a few cases where I've had to purchase another stick of RAM because the stick I got was bad, but otherwise, surprisingly, getting those have been cheap and usually reliably working. Then, as for PC card stuff, which is more applicable to laptops of that time period, there are so many Ethernet or Wi Fi or USB port PC cards. It's kind of silly, and at least in my experience, you can pick them up for a few dollars.
Hmm, that's pretty fascinating. I kind of figured it'd be much like an older car where, the further time goes on, certain components for cars, I mean, for the most part, mechanicals, brakes, whatnot, I've noticed, don't tend to starve of um, availability, but it's more like glass, lights, body panels, other small items that eventually would dry up. I would I would kind of assume that with like computers with chips, perhaps fans or what have you, would eventually dry up the same way.
Yeah, now thankfully, a lot of those components are standardized in some way where they have a standard connector or something else. Now, of course, if you have an issue with the actual case, you might need someone who has access to a 3D printer. I know on one of my iBooks, one of the clamshell iBooks, I'm actually missing the leaf from the Apple logo, and I need to find someone who can print that out for me. But otherwise, for anything that's actually inside the computer, usually you're in good luck because everything is standardized. Expansion cards use standard connectors, uh, hard disks use standard connectors, RAM types are standardized unless you have some computer that's using some proprietary setup for some reason, in which case, good luck.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, thankfully, a lot of this stuff is plug and play. The thing you kind of have to worry about more is whether or not there is a driver available for the system for the OS you have installed on the computer that can actually use whatever hardware you put in. Otherwise, it's kind of amazing how well stuff works. Like you can put a SSD from 2021 in a computer from 20 plus years ago, and all you'd really need is a converter just to convert from the parallel ATA plug to the serial ATA plug.
That's
And
pretty fascinating.
those are usually you can find really cheap for like a few dollars.
So then, so for my own analogy, to make a comparison, so in this case, my Skylark, 1960s car, actually entirely made out of metal. Like any cars from 40s, actually really any cars from the 1970s and onwards were mostly made of metal. In theory, these cars could last forever because you could have a car rust out, replace the rusty bits, paint it, recondition it, rebuild it, and it's a car once again, a complete car, and extending its life expectancy on the road double that. And of course, with parts availability as far as mechanicals are always available, and some aftermarket supporters supporting certain cars as well, could really mean that these vehicles could last indefinitely. So in what so what you're describing is that these computers from 2005 and prior are technically the classic cars of their own format or their technology. It really seems that these machines, which were to a lot of people thought were disposable, like the cars back in the day, in theory you could keep them going indefinitely with the right components.
Yeah, now if you have an issue with the motherboard on these machines, you'll probably have trouble unless you can somehow desolder pieces off of it, which you usually can't. But otherwise, if you have an issue with something that's not the motherboard, you can usually replace the part.
So there's always good enough chances that if there was one bug with a machine, it'd be easily repairable to a good degree that you don't have to worry about it being out of action or out of commission if you are a purveyor of such technology.
Yeah. Yeah, usually you can just kind of replace whatever is wrong. Now, of course, there is nuance with that, but generally that holds up for most components.
It's pretty much the same with the classic car scene where if your body shell or your frame is in really good shape, anything else can be done about it. My Skylark needs a new floor, but it's sitting on a frame on its own. The frame supports the rest of the car. Granted, it's nice to have a floor. At some point, I would like to put, and I can, put in a brand new sheet metal floor with a few other extra bits of metal to, fill up for what's there. And it's really flat pieces of steel that I can just pound out into shape. It's really not that bad. If your frame or your unibody is in good shape, you have a good base to work on. Whereas cars that have been so fully rotten out that their frames are not savable, the body might be if it's a body on frame, but you have to look for a whole frame, which can be trouble. Or if it's a unibody, literally dozens of stamped components welded together into one piece. You have to work a lot to unweld, meaning you have to drill out the welds of each component panel and then remove it. And sometimes there are maybe 3 or 4 different stampings of metal being pinched and welded together at the same time. So
Oh my god.
sometimes, so then I guess in the case of the motherboard, if some components are so bad, it may not be worth fixing it unless you can find something that is readily available and cheap to plug and play.
Right. Now, what's funny with the motherboards is when you go back in time, typically it can be easier to resolve issues with the motherboard because on really old machines, typically a lot of the chips are socketed rather than
Soldered on.
soldered on.
So in that case, it's a saving grace for those older motherboards because anyone who's not experienced with soldering can actually, in theory, fix their own motherboards by just perhaps popping out chips or microprocessors. I'm just throwing out words
Yeah.
that I don't know, and just literally
Yeah,
find one
you
that
could do that on I know like 286, 386, 486 base machines, typically the um, math coprocessor is in a socket, and usually the normal actual CPU is in a socket as well, which still holds true today, except for laptops mainly. Usually with laptops, it's soldered on, but yeah, you can still take out stuff. But usually in older machines, there's a lot more components that are a lot more chips that are actually socketed, like the actual BIOS ROM is socketed, for instance.
Now, here's an interesting question. Have you ever bought a machine that you thought was good? Turns out when you brought it home, it was actually a pile that may or may not have been repairable.
Um, so far, I haven't had that experience entirely. I have had a few, um, I've had a few issues with machines, mainly from either damage in shipping or just not being powered on in 20 years, but usually I've been able to fix those. Like, for instance, the tray loading iMac G3 I have, when I first got that machine, it was from a person at my college who I had only known for 15 minutes, never talked with before or after since, and it had been sitting in storage for who knows how long. And when I first got the machine, the internal CRT, since it was a all-in-one machine, the CRT monitor would tend to flicker a lot. Um, it wouldn't want to turn on at times. Um, it would have issues with not really want to do anything for several days after replacing certain components. The internal battery didn't work, stuff like that. But kind of with time, everything except the internal battery, because the internal battery I needed to replace, it almost seemed to get more stable with time. And I don't know. It's kind of weird to think about, but
Hmm.
almost kind of had that experience. But so far, um, haven't had a machine that's just kind of that I thought was good that ended up being jank. I do, however, have some machines in my possession that are jank because recently I picked up a bunch of laptops from Roswell. He had one laptop I was interested in. He was interested in getting rid of that one and five others, so I ended up picking them up all from him. And some of those weren't really in the best of condition, but I wasn't expecting, I wasn't really expecting anything to work at all. So in that case, it was a plus.
Yeah, for me, it's not so much computer-based technology that I collect. I tend to collect film cameras for the most part. And the more mechanical a camera is, I have better luck because by I would say by 1980, cameras were starting to become a little bit more electrical based, meaning now they had batteries that was required to trip the shutter mechanism because it was a magnetic trip. So after a while, can't okay, okay. So for a long time, cameras were always mechanical. There was nothing to power them. It was literally clockwork. Literally springs, gears, and levers, whatnot, is what actually operates these things, which for the most part tends to be quite trouble free. Um, I've never had a mechanical analog camera, and even technically, you could say 80s cameras that had a little bit more technology put in them are still considered analog to a good degree. Really, the 90s was when things really digitalized, as far as even film cameras, and then the digital era. Um, so there was a time when there was no such thing as a battery to operate the camera, but there was a battery to operate the light meter. And sometimes the light meters don't work, but as long as the camera mechanically works, I can use a separate light meter source to do my focusing work with, as far as getting pictures not under or overexposed. Then in the 1970s, you start to see cameras with not just a battery for the light meter, but you also got a battery for the operational sense of the thing. Literally, you can I have a don't really have an easy way to actually describe it, but pretty much cocking the lever to advance the film,
Okay.
or actually it's just the film advance. And once you prime it for the next shot, there's always a button. On a mechanical camera, just press the button. On a camera with a battery, you press the button, it magnetically activates the. It's technically kind of like a mechanical keyboard in a sense, and eventually that stops working just due to wear. But most of my cameras tend to be from late 70s, early 80s. And I've never had one issue except for one camera. That's a different issue. Um, these cameras are transitional because they also have they have a mechanical backup at 60 feet per second. If the battery was dead, there was only one speed that the camera can still work mechanically if the battery stopped. You're still screwed, but you can still take some rudimentary pictures with a half-dead camera. Then by
Okay.
the early 80s, um, the mechanical auxiliary aspect of that function was gone. Then it was entirely electric as far as the shutter button. Still very mechanical. That as the 90s progressed, there was no mechanism to actually trip the shutter from button to uh, to the mirror shutter, or the shutter mirror. At that point, it just became a wire, and it just released it also magnetically as well. I think it's a solenoid or something, and even capacitors in a camera will shock the living shit out of you. But oh yeah, and
Zap.
the one camera that totally surprised me, that was a total fluke, of all that I just said, that about I would say about 7 years ago, I bought my most expensive camera body, or SLR film camera up to that point, and I still think up to this point is the most expensive camera I bought. Because most cases I go to antique shops or Goodwill, I pay no more than $25 for each camera because I'm not going to spend that much money.
Right.
This one was $100, and at a Mike Crivello's in Brookfield. And it was a Yashica TL Super from 1966 or 67, which Yashica bodies never really changed for 20 years. However, it used the old screw mount, an M42. There was M38 and there was M42 screw mount, which I think were left-hand thread or something. But anyway, fully mechanical camera, and it did not require a battery to operate the shutter button. Uh-oh, and I got one of those stupid bugs. I keep killing them, and they keep coming out. It's like Russians in World War II. You kill one, and then there's 200 of them replacing it. I tested out the camera there. I really liked it. It had a good lens, and I bought it. I didn't do much testing beyond that. Well, when I got home and I was playing with it more, I realized the back screen that helps keep the actual film inside the camera body not exposed to light when you advance the film for the next shot, and then it trips and releases, exposing the film to whatever you're taking a picture of. That's actually a fabric screen, and it's supposed to go parallel. It's actually supposed to slide parallel one direction. Well, kind of like an old lampshade, or not a lampshade, but like a window shade. You know how sometimes they go askewy and they kind of go diagonally?
Yeah.
Well, this happened to that camera, and I was totally fucked.
Oh no.
Most of my cameras don't have a screen. They actually have metal vanes that go up or sideways, which I like metal vanes because there's almost nothing to go wrong with them, and they almost never go wrong unless you really play with them, meaning you break the living fuck out of them, and then you break them, and there's no fixing that. The screen went sideways, and it's like, well, shit, I just paid $100 for a camera that now I can't use because it won't close, or when it did close, it was still showing bits of the inner part of the focal point of the pentaprism, and it's like perfectly useless, but I used the lens. It was a good lens. Bought an adapter ring for it. And the more I played with it later on, I ended up fixing the screen on its own. But then all of a sudden, now the shutter mirror that's part of the pentaprism that flips up to expose the image on the back of the camera body, which what records the image on film, anytime that you would use it, it would lift up, but it won't release. But then when you advance the film and then press the button again, then it drops. So now there's other problems with it. Now I've got egg on my face with a camera that had one issue, then had another issue that I can't unwork because the first one worked out just fine, and the second one is, I think, maybe a terminally ill camera, but you can fix these cameras. It's like an old car. As long as you tear them apart, you clean them, and you repair them, these cameras can live in theory forever. But I'm not that knowledgeable about old cameras. I'm not a camera technician from that time period to know what I'm doing. There's one place in Madison, I think, or one part of the country that will repair old film cameras of any time period within given reason. If you can find a parts camera for it, then they can literally rebuild your camera with better parts from the other camera or from your camera and then make it work. But you're spending a lot of money. And there's the possibility that it won't fix it. So I'm sitting on a camera that really doesn't work, but it's a good display piece, which for a film photography project, I will use that as a representative camera of the 1960s for SLRs, but sadly I can't really use it, and it's been kind of an eyesore in my collection just because I like collecting cameras, but I also like using my collection on photo shoots as well. It's kind of like my definition of a classic car. You can have a classic car, but if you're going to put it in a bubble and it never gets driven, and you only take it to shows, and you never really turn the engine on, you roll it on and off a trailer to be viewed by many, to be judged by many judges, but you never get a chance to enjoy it. What's the point of owning what you own if you can't enjoy it?
Yeah, I get what you mean with that, where with my old computer collection, I try to actually make the computers I have usable. Try to get old software on them. Not necessarily games. I usually like to mess around with a lot of old developer tools on my old machines, mainly because I'm a software engineer. That's the field I work in. My silly brain decides that's more interesting than old games for some reason, but it's very interesting to be able to use that to kind of as a window to the past of how things used to be done. But yeah, I try to make sure I can actually use each of the machines in my collection. Now, granted, right now a good number of them are just kind of quote unquote sitting on display, but
But then you tend to dust them out and bring them out and you use them for a while just to enjoy them. They get some
yeah,
use. So you kind of cycle through them from time to time.
yeah, I do cycle through them, and of course each one has different hardware, um, different characteristics to each one. So yeah, I do make sure that I do continue to get use out of them.
That's kind of how I feel with my film cameras, at least for the ones I can get film for. So that's 135 or 35 millimeter film, which is ubiquitous. There's 120 millimeter, the only medium format camera left on spool, on an actual classic bi-metal wood, metal or plastic spool. That's the only kind of film you can get still on a spool. That requires a second spool. Oh, damn it, it's climbing all over the place. Which does require a second spool for the take-up, because it'd be the supply spool, then it goes to a take-up spool. And then you got 110 film, which is a small plastic cartridge, which is it's a mix of both, actually, between a canister film and a spool film. Because it's technically both, in a sense. So, yeah, and even going through my own collection, I'm considering probably letting go of some cameras eventually, knowing that some I can't get film for, some are kind of collecting dust and I probably won't use. Just to kind of clear up the camera tote space so that way I'll have cameras that I've acquired or have owned that I still use, that are still functional, that I can enjoy and whatnot, have those always on standby and whatnot. And the cameras that tend to collect dust for the longest time, I just may end up giving them to someone who would be interested in using them, or even toying around with them. Like this Yashica TL Super, I may just end up just giving it away to anyone who would probably be interested in maybe fixing it up, or taking the effort to send it to this place to get it fixed, because I forget what it's called. But there's only one place in the country that will fix old cameras, and it may be worth the money giving it away for free, because I know I can't get what I paid for it. It's literally a parts camera. It'd probably be $20. Yeah, I could get $20 out of it, but not that I would probably get it at that point. If someone wants to use it as a display piece, so be it.
Yeah.
But I mean, these are all technically tools. People used them back in their day. And while I like a display, while I like a collection, it's nice to have a functional collection that you can also use for their intended purpose. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's cool when you cherish something, and it's nice that you also use them at the same time. You can pamper them, but also use them at the same time. That does exist.
Yeah, that's why I upgrade the hardware on the machines on my collection. I wanna make sure I can actually use them for stuff and things.
Right, and with my cameras, I try to at least take out the batteries out of them to store them better, so that way the batteries don't leak out. But I notice with modern batteries, they don't do that so much, or at least not a long-term storage. It's not an issue, but some of these batteries have been in these cameras for so long that they start to leak acid in the form of powder, which actually I don't know how to actually undo that. I'm sure something like another base or another acid could clean that up. But for example, today I bought some light meters. Many years ago, I used, I think was a Sekonic L128. I have it written down. I was wanting to find a replacement, Bought it for $3 at an antique store. Literally needed a battery. It worked just fine. Very simple, very 80s because it was black and silver. So, because that's what everything was. Technology back then was black and silver, like cameras, like radio receivers, like maybe computers, where it was still wood, fake wood color.
We need to bring that back.
We need to bring that back. We need to bring back the fake wood. And while on a film shoot, I had dropped my light meter. It was a cheap thing. It was mostly all plastic anyway. But it broke the connection to the, not the selenium cell, but to the light-sensitive cell. Because if you have a selenium cell, you don't need a battery, and I can explain more of that later. So that was kaput. Couldn't fix it. It can be fixed, but I don't have any knowledge about doing that. So I decided to buy some. I bought 3 light meters for shits and giggles, and you always want to check the battery compartments. As I spin this little thing around, like every single camera of the 70s or 60s, 70s, 80s, and probably 90s still had. You want to check to see if there is still a battery in it, which if it does have a battery and it's not leaked, you have a good representative to get a replacement battery for. So if it didn't leak, you scored, and you have a reference number that you can go off on buying a new battery if they still make them, which most batteries they still tend to make anyway.
Yeah.
Unless it's from like 50s and prior, then they probably won't make it at that point.
Even then, it's a watch battery. It's probably still made, especially if it's something common like a CR2032.
Right. And most camera bodies tend to use the 357 button battery. Yeah, he's buzzing around. So for the most part, if you stock up on 357 batteries, not the handgun caliber, but the 357 type battery, you're in luck because a lot of cameras still use it for either their light meter or their overall function. Which this is a slightly bigger one, so I'm not sure what this would be. This is a Sekonic Multi-Lumi L248, which I've never used before, but if you look that up, it is a really nice classic computer of a light meter from a bygone era, because they still make light meters for I don't know what reason, but they're all digital with digital display, but you can do so much more. This is still somewhat kind of mechanical in getting a reading. You still use a button to do your measurement, but it's a dial, and as long as you read and understand what it does, you can figure out what you need to do. Goes to 4 thousandths of a second shutter speed, and goes up to about 30-minute exposure, which is insane.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's actually a 30-minute exposure. So at that point, if you were taking a night shot of something, you could if you expose it for 30 minutes.
Oh my
And then
goodness.
it'd be clear as day.
That is awesome.
Because even on a moonless night, there's still a little bit of light somewhere, unless it's
Right.
just pitch dark, and then you have a pitch dark photo. So here's one, and the beauty of it is there's no battery in it, so it's untouched. Then I found this. Ugh, I am dragging everything around.
You were tangled, Hoosk.
I am tangled. Oh, fuck it. Damn it. I really did it this time. Uh-oh. Wait.
Oh,
there it is.
yeah, there you go. Alright, actually, I think...
I may have messed it up a bit.
Flip this around, I think. Like, put that...
There we go.
There you go.
So here is a night light meter, which I think is probably either from the 60s or 70s, but this looks more 70s to me. It's got 30-minute... It goes down to 30 minutes as far as shutter speed, and goes up to, again, 4 thousandth of a second, which is really fast. The majority of film cameras don't go beyond more than 2,000. If you got a camera that goes up to 2,000, most of them go to 1,000, and that's kind of it. 80s cameras might get you to 2,000. I've never seen a camera in my adventures that will do 4,000, but some might. And again, this one, which makes it very easy to remove the battery cover.
Oh yeah, don't even need a coin for that one.
No. And you know what? Same thing, and even still, this is even a bigger battery compartment, so I'd have to look up
That's a tall battery.
It is a very tall battery, which I'm going to be hard-pressed to find one for it, but it's possible they still might make it. This is a Night KG275 light meter, and looks in good shape. Looks like it's still functional. Just needs a battery to find out if it still works. So that's fantastic, and a lot of this technology will just keep working unless you damage it. But light cells, or sensitive light cells, should still work unless abused. Then we have something from 1947, which is a GE exposure meter, and the model number is an 8DW58Y4. Nothing really catchy, just exposure meter. And the beauty of this thing is it does not require a battery because it is a selenium sensor. Now, I'm not so much a chemist, but this is such a light-sensitive material that it actually conducts its own electrical charge to power the meter. And in theory, the older you go for a selenium light cell, in theory they could last indefinitely if you always store them in darkness. They will literally last forever. Like, this is an 80-year-old light meter that still works. And there's still stuff from like the 80s that doesn't work because they just cheapened out stuff. It's some really good quality. And I kind of do look forward to actually using it and learning more about it because it comes with a manual. And I bought some film, but I also bought a film camera today. And I bought what looked like an incredibly good 110 film camera, which has a really janky zipper, but I'm just gonna...
You did it. Well, you are doing it. It's like the zipper just wants to come off the pathway instead of actually unzipping. No, I mean, like, if you look at the actual base of the zipper, it's like trying to...
Oh, maybe.
The front is trying to dig into the thing, and then the back is trying to come out.
It is actually a really nice case. It's just the zipper is askew on one side, and it's kind of a pain in the ass.
It's secure.
It is very secure.
If you can't get it, no one can.
So, this is a 110.
That is a wide camera.
It's very wide and very small, with a long carrying strap, which is amazing. This thing, which I think even has its own battery check, if that red button is what it is. This is a Minolta AutoPack 470 with its appropriate Flash Pocket 110 flash, which detaches like that. So it's actually
that's really cool.
A hot shoe, which has its own... Now, this is what happens when you go out in the wild. Look for stuff like this. Oh, this is actually a metal face, too. That's kind of cool. Unfortunately, you don't always get lucky.
Oh, no.
And you get something that did explode.
No.
And believe it or not, the last time this was used had a battery with a best if installed by January of 1996. Battery.
Oh, my goodness.
So this thing hasn't been used in 25 years or something like that.
I'm surprised that battery hasn't leaked more.
And actually, looking inside, nothing.
Oh, that's good.
So that's good. So really, the only thing I have to clean on this flash unit is literally the cover. So that makes things simple. I don't know how to clean battery acid, but I'm sure there's a way.
I know some people who have had battery issues with vintage computers have been able to put whole motherboards in a dishwasher. Of course, you have to load it a certain way, but if you can dishwash a motherboard to clean off battery acid and have it still work if the acid hasn't been on there long enough to erode everything, I assume you probably wouldn't need to do anything super special to clean the battery acid off of that.
I think this would be fun to actually get this working, because a lot of old flash units will still work. Now this, I didn't think this was a...
It's so tiny.
It is. This is actually the camera itself. This is literally the camera. And how you load film is this.
Oh.
It's literally a saddle drum cartridge.
That's cool.
And they still make it. Of all formats that they continue to still make, this one actually is still being used.
Is there something in there?
Yeah, it was a little bit of dirt or something. Ooh, okay. So actually the shutter still works on it. Yeah. So mechanically it still works. So in theory it should still work anyway.
That's a crisp button.
And since this is an automatic, it's automatic exposure, which is the second window there. This is what you see out of. This is what the film sees.
Okay.
It even comes with its own little special door to keep crap from getting inside. But since there is a focus setting on it, that must mean this has its own light meter that does its own thing. And let's take a look at what that is. And oh my goodness.
Oh no.
And this is I think this is an LR44 battery, which may also be a 357 battery.
It is also prescribed to help with heartburn.
Oh yes, you know it's even got the
Just
Spare
based on the
Plus.
size of it.
This is a Kodak KA76 battery. Made in Japan, so it must be good, but it's still leaked acid. The fun bit about that is that it even says S76 equivalent. So I don't have to do too much research to find what this battery is.
That's
Give
very
it a little
good.
bit of a clean. Let's take a look at the other one just to be safe. Actually, you know what? This should clean out just fine. I just got to clean this a bit and it should still work. So with this camera, I lucked out. The batteries didn't leak out too much. The contacts are on the door, which shouldn't need too much aggressive cleaning. The contacts on the door for the flash is its own separate unit. I can clean that. So this comes to the question of, if you're going to use your camera, you should always have your batteries in it just in case. Keep spare batteries also.
Yeah.
Because I can't tell you how many times I've gone out to take pictures of stuff and then realize my cameras are dead. Or my camera's dead because of a dead battery and you don't have spare film to at least prop it back up to sobriety to work. Uh-oh. Are you okay, Roo?
Yeah, it's better now. Just had a little bit of pain kind of below my left lung.
Uh-oh.
It's all good now, though.
We will never know.
What the heck is going on upstairs? Do you hear that?
Yes, I hear that, and I don't know what it is.
I blame the polecat.
The polecat.
Has polecat ever been on one of these podcasts?
No, and I need to bug him to get him on at some point. But when you look at old film cameras, definitely check the battery compartment just to make sure that things aren't totally fucked, because if it's a camera from the 70s or 80s that requires a battery for light meter exposure or full-on camera control, you want to make sure that it's somewhat clean or salvageable, in your opinion, to make sure that works, because these cameras are still full mechanical, even if they got a button or like button batteries to power the automatic exposure. In theory, these cameras have a mechanical fail-safe in case all doesn't work. It'll work on one setting only, but you still have a camera that will still work. It's just...
That's very cool.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, okay. So it's got a slight bypass. Oh, it's because this thing is... Wow. Okay. Wait, so...
Oh, so you can't accidentally take a photo of nothing when the protective cover is on. That's cool.
This is a fully automatic 110 camera, because normally you have to trip it with the film. Okay, so actually there might be some hope with this camera, even if I don't get the automatic exposure thing to work. This will still make a good camera, even if I can get the flash working. So, the door is plastic, but this is all metal. But old technology is fun because you can put very little effort to make something work. which I find it fantastic. Even actually the hot shoe function, which is even more adorable that it has a hot shoe instead of a cold shoe. It's this little this disc there.
Okay.
When you take the picture, it sends a small electrical pulse through this little contact. Yep.
Oh, I see.
So in case this, apparently if this doesn't work, you could still in theory trip the flash. If it will do that, that's the question. But in time, we will find out. But,
That is one firm on-off switch.
yeah. Oh, you know it. Oh. That is really cool. And you know what? It doesn't have instructions, but it even tells you on the bottom of the camera the lens setting, so you know what to exactly use it for, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different settings.
Yeah, and this Pocket Flash also has a data table on the back too.
So it's pretty helpful. Even see, that's the beauty about old technology, is sometimes they'll have instructions on the product, even if you don't have the instruction manual with it.
Right.
You could still figure it out without a manual, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, or even if there aren't instructions, it is designed in such a way where it is meant to be easy to repair.
Right.
Like heck, my old Apple machines, like my tray loading iMac G3, there's very few screws you have to unscrew to take it apart. There's handles to help pull things out. Everything's just kind of simple to take apart. Compare that to the Apple of a few years later, where you're not meant to get at the innards at all, and it's almost kind of crazy to think that this was the same company.
Oh yeah, it's interesting that we came from a time when anything is technically considered repairable, that you didn't have to throw away the whole unit. You could keep the same unit and put some replacement parts in it to keep it going. With cars, it used to be fuel pumps, used to be really anything on a car you could literally disassemble entirely, instead of it's like one component that couldn't be disassembled fully. Back then, parts could have been disassembled to its smallest component and then replaced if needed. Nowadays, we live in such a throwaway society that it's not necessary. You could throw away a car's fuel pump today because it's not functional. Even in the 90s, you could replace the filter, the pump, or other assemblies. Now it's just one unit where you literally can't do that, which is kind of a shame. And I think with computers was the same thing, where if you're going to be spending nearly $5,000 on a home desktop in the 1990s, you better bet that these components are not only you could get repaired, but even subsections of these components could be replaced without replacing the whole unit.
Right.
Or else nowadays, if my phone dies, yeah, I could spend extra money to get someone to tear it literally apart to get at what's broken. But if you've had your phone for so long, it may be cost prohibitive that you're better off spending that money to fix the phone to then start looking at another phone to replace it, which
Right.
unfortunately is part of the throwaway society we live in today.
But it's also a consequence of efficiencies in manufacturing. Many of the components on your smartphone right there are probably all contained in one single chip,
Yeah.
called a system on a chip. There's no way you're going to be able to take the cover off to repair something on the die when the space between transistors is
Micrometers or something?
like
Or-
nanometers apart.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, you're not. And the thing that kind of stinks with that is seeing that kind of thing also creep into high-end computers. Like, for example, the new Apple MacBooks that are based on the ARM-based M1 processor have everything on a single board, to the point where, from what I've heard, the RAM is not even upgradable or replaceable, which is, to me, that's kind of blasphemous, but I don't know. I still think components like that should still be able to be serviceable by the end user.
Which, in theory, could mean that a lot of these new pieces of technology are are still throw away. Well, technically disposable. If you really think about it, something so expensive, and I didn't pay full price for this phone. I bought it secondhand,
Yeah.
and that was like, I think $540 or something like that. And one of these brand new was like 800.
Holy fuck.
So, and I don't know how old it really was, but it's a Galaxy S8, and it's not an Edge. It's actually not an Edge. I didn't go with the Edge. And I think it's one of the last Samsung phones that don't have an Edge, because I think they all have an Edge now.
Yeah.
Which Kurdan had an S7 with an Edge, and it was annoying for him. So I just learned from that.
Yeah, it seems like that might be annoying when using your phone in bed for 2 hours when you're trying to actually sleep but not actually sleep.
Yeah. But it's stuff like this that cameras and items like this are going to be still collectible even in the future, because it's still simple, it's still repairable, and there's
Right.
not much to go wrong with it. You could say the same with this, but there's so much more going on that if something were to go, you're better off either throwing it out or getting it recycled, because sometimes they do recycle old phones.
Yeah.
But even still, they just literally tear it apart for its materials. They don't actually fix it unless you want to put in the effort to do so.
Right. And even what's kind of crazy now is sometimes the end user can't even get at the battery in order to replace the battery. Now, my phone, I can replace the battery, and I can also have external storage in the form of an SD card, but some people don't even have the luxury of that.
Right. Oh, I totally agree. It's kind of sad that that you don't have the option for that if you wanted to. Now everything is so closed system. It's a closed system that you really can't get yourself into. Good for the manufacturer and its warranty that you don't have to worry about its customers fucking around with it.
Yeah.
But also now something as simple as a battery change can't be done because it's all part of the chassis.
Yeah.
This type of technology won't be collectible in 20 years' time because people aren't going to remember these things. They're going to remember them. Oh, yeah, it was a good phone for the time. But are people going to go out of their way to collect them? Functional? I can see functional copies of these things going for big money just because so many of them were made, so many of them would get junked that few of these examples will work.
Right.
That people might spend good money, and when I mean good money, I'm talking about maybe $100 or $200 for a camera that from 50 years or from a smartphone 50 years ago, people are going to buy for nostalgic reasons and say, "Oh, this is what happened," and then keep it on a shelf somewhere.
Right.
It's going to be weird to see someone born around now is going to be looking at our technology today as something as, "Oh, this is so collectible," where technology we grew up with or prior, because really film cameras within the time we were born, people were still using film quite extensively into the early 2000s. Digital cameras did exist. They were very they were not ineffectual. They were useful. You couldn't store a lot of images on a camera or on its memory chip.
Right.
And they're expensive until cameras got less expensive by making more of them, making them priced to sell. Then film started to die down in around 2004, 2005, or even 2006.
Oh my goodness.
But we still lived in the time of film, so a lot of this stuff makes sense.
Yeah, like I know when I was growing up, my parents primarily used a film camera until they got a digital camera.
Yeah, my dad really didn't get his first digital camera until 2009, which I used his for the most part. I was gifted a camera in... Actually, no, his camera was from 2004 to 2005, so he had an early version of a Sony CyberShot. Then in 2009, I got my own CyberShot, but I was gifted it. That camera lasted until 2012, 2013. It was because I went to the beach, and it had a telescoping lens. And I had it in my pocket. Some sand got in the pocket.
Uh-oh.
And when I pulled the camera out and opened it, or turned it on to have the telescope lens go out, it jammed that way. Then I panicked and then I turned it off and it jammed even more the other way. So that became a brick. But the data chip I could still use, plugged it in my computer because there was a port for it. So I saved it off on that. But that was the end of that camera. And then I bought my very first digital camera in 20... Actually, I waited a while. I didn't buy another camera that was digital until... Actually, no, I think it was a good year. I think it was 2013. It was when I finally decided, okay, I need another digital camera. And that was my newest cyber shot, which I haven't really used much since, because I've been using DSLRs, which I'm actually looking forward to replacing mine with a new one at some point. But I've been using both film and DSLR digital camera that, using the small point-and-shoot cyber shot, while it was nice initially, I didn't really use too much of it, actually. The last time I used it was in 2014 or something, so it's been a long time. But yeah, it's actually fun to collect a lot of this older stuff. Now, let's go on to another subject and talk about fursuits.
Fursuits.
So recently we helped you with a duct tape dummy a few weeks ago. It's safely now in Germany. And you were asking me about some helpful tips on how to maintain and clean your fursuit. Most certainly, you can always wash the body parts, tail, and hand paws in your, I was going to say dishwasher, no. You could maybe wash the dishwasher, but I don't know how that would work. But you could wash it in your washer. I tend to do cold setting, just in case I don't want my colors to run, but I've never had that issue, but I always play it safe. I just do cold. And I use woolite if you have a lot of white. Then there's woolite dark if you have a lot of more darker colors. And it's kept my suit clean, so I can't complain there. And you could use other products too, but if you have a lot of light colors, let's say you're both like black and white, I would probably use woolite anyway to brighten up the white. Because at that point, white gets more dingier, so you're better off cleaning the lighter colors anyway. Darker colors are hard enough to know if they're dingy, although you can clean them and they'll clean up pretty well. So you can toss them in the wash, and he's still buzzing around. He's being dumb. You mentioned about the dryer. Now, will it destroy your fursuit? Maybe. I've only known of one individual locally. I won't say his name. Actually, I kind of forgot his name. It's been so long.
I think I might know who.
Uh-oh.
Won't say.
Is he mostly red?
No.
Okay, so then it's a different person. So there's two people out there in the area that's done this by accident. He washed his fursuit and decided to put it in the dryer to dry it up. It didn't shrink his suit, but it made the furs, which used to be straight and soft, made them nice and curly, which made his suit very, very curly. However, he got lucky with it, because after 2-3 years of constant brushing, he was able to straighten them out to the point that you didn't know that he put it in the dryer. So he got lucky where it didn't really bake. It actually kind of worked out all right. But yeah, avoid putting any fursuit part in the dryer. You're better off having it air dry with a fan. So brush first, hang up, and then put a nice fan on them so that way it'll dry out naturally.
Now, when you're brushing a suit, can you just use a normal hairbrush, or do you have a special brush that's kind of more delicate or anything like that?
I tend to use a slicker brush, but I use it the opposite fashion, where a slicker brush is meant to take out fur, the way if you pull against the brush, if you go along with it, it won't take any fur, and it'll actually clean out the fur follicles, if you may. in a nice way that'll actually make it look nice. There's also other brushes that don't take out fur but help straighten it. Those work too.
Okay.
Traditional brushes you could also use as well,
Yes.
like the bristle brush. You could use a
Yeah,
bristle
because I know
brush as well.
the brush I use for my hair, usually got to clean it after because it really likes to take out my hair. So,
Yeah.
so
Well,
such a thing would probably be dangerous for a suit.
yeah. Long furs. You got to be a little bit more tricky. It's a bit more tricky because I'm sure with long hair, long furs could get tangled too. So you want to be careful with that. Definitely brush your suit after you wash it, just to make it look nice. Because once it dries, it'll look like that, for the most part. You still need a brush here and there,
Right.
but if you don't brush your suit when it's wet and when it dries, it'll just look exactly like that. The way to fix it: spray water on it and straighten it out. Or if that doesn't work, put it in the wash, just with water. It's still clean, but this way it's wet again, so you can do it again. This time, brushing the fur in the direction it's supposed to go, and then it'll dry like that. So,
Okay.
fursuit feet, which might be foam, you might be able to get away just by putting it in the wash, but don't actually tumble. So make it no spin and have it just wash like that. That way it'll put gravity on it. Won't put any stress on the feet itself, but some feet are built differently, so be cautious with that.
Yeah, like I know I'll probably have to be careful with that because I'm looking to have more Roo-like paws, which are, longer. So probably have
And
to be careful about that.
and I'm curious to know what fursuit feet would like, how clean they would get if I were to put one in the wash, no spin, and just have them clean out, wash through it, and have gravity and water flow just trickle the filth outside of the foam and the feet, just to see what would happen if they may even clean them up. And fursuit heads, definitely just spot clean with a spray bottle with water or laundry detergent. Spray a little bit, not to get sopping wet, but spray a bit and then wipe clean. Because normally it's just the surface. If you can clean a bit of the surface off, it'll look cleaner. But then after a while, even the neck area of fur gets so dirty from sweat that it's better off to dunk the whole suit not up to the eyes. You want to keep the eyes above the water, because sometimes some eyes are not waterproof and the colors will run.
Okay.
But what you want to do is you just want to get a bit of the cheeks, the back of the head, and all of the neck to be submerged in soapy water. Then you want to cradle it like a baby, and I mean that seriously because it's going to be heavy, wet, and it's going to start bending in different ways. You want to support the whole head so it keeps its shape.
Yeah.
Then what you do is you wring it out just a bit gently. So you wring out the fur just to get some of the filth out. Then you dump out, and the filth, you can notice it. Even if it may be not fully 100% clean, it's still much more cleaner than it was before. I guarantee it. Then you dump out the old, filthy, soapy water. Then you get a rinse water, fill it up to about the same amount. You gently put it back in, not to get the eyes wet. Then you pull it out again, and then you do one final wring. Again, you cradle it up like a baby. You want to support it. And you air dry it with a fan. And brush. And unless your fursuit head does not have a lot of light or wet colors, I mean, for hygiene purposes, it's nice to clean like that, but it's not so apparent to see dingy fur with darker colors because it's just not noticeable. Mostly if you have a mostly white or partially white fursuit.
That's going to be me.
Okay, so it's somewhat like me as well. And I cleaned both of my fursuit heads like this, and I experimented with Dustin 1.0 to clean him up because he was incredibly filthy because I've never cleaned him that way, which I probably should have taken better care of his head better.
I need to see him sometime.
Which I think at some point I definitely want to show you. But I experimented with him because he was kind of a head I don't use anymore.
Yeah.
So if something went totally south, I'm not out of a head. Turned out, worked beautifully. Cleaned out the neck flap, which looked disgustingly dingy, and then turned out at the very end, cleaned it out to where it was like I wouldn't say 100%, but I'd say 90% clean. It still looked clean. It was very cleaner. Very, very clean than it was before.
Clean Hoosk.
I would say it was about, which disgustingly dingy at 65% clean, which means a lot of filth. It cleaned it up to 90%, which was fantastic, because that means the suit is very presentable. At least it doesn't look disgusting. And cleaned it out so well that I feel proud of it again. I don't know, there's so many good videos out there of how to clean a fursuit. I could go into my own details on how I clean a suit specifically. That's something I could maybe do for a video another time. And I think that'd be pretty interesting. The way how I might do something would be different from what someone else does.
That'd be interesting to watch.
But generally the same concept. But whatever you do, do not put your suit, any parts of it, wet in the dryer. Just, it's not a good thing.
All the fur just melts together.
I have never seen anything like that, but that would terrify me too. Yeah, that's just kind of, it's kind of a rushed, rushed information about how you clean a suit. But as long as you just use cold water in your washer, you put the proper amount of soap for your machine, or whatever the amount from the bottle says that's appropriate.
Yeah.
And I tend to put my bodysuit and my paws and my tail all in one because it'll clean just as well. Because most likely a cycle might last 30 to 40 minutes, so it doesn't matter where stuff is, it's all going to get clean anyway. If it's possible for you to put your suit inside out while you wash it inside the washer, do that. Because it's not so much the fur that gets filthy, it's mostly the base. The base fabric is what gets filthy the most.
Okay.
Because they're going to be sweating through it. So that's most important, although really, it's going to wash anyway. But I like to keep, as best as I can, inside out. Unless you have foam padding that's not removable. Do it halfway, so that means the upper part of the body is clean that way. So, yeah, I should probably make just a smooth video of how that's done. Because I was kind of curious about how to wash my suit. The thing is, any people that I did ask personally weren't no help at all. I don't know if it's because they just weren't helpful or for what reason, but they were of no help to me. And online at the time, there wasn't many videos on how to wash your fursuit at the time. Now every Poppy Fur will tell you how to wash a fursuit as one of their videos. But back nearly 10 years ago, there was no videos like that out there. There were very few, but they were also incomplete. There are certain things about how to wash your head, feet, paws, whatnot. There were no videos about that back then. Now there are, because people decided to figure out what works best, and they put them online, and that tends to be the stuff that people go for.
And also, being clean is kind of good.
And being clean is good, and the best compliment as a fursuiter you can get is, "Oh, you smell so clean." When you get a compliment like that, you know you're taking care of your suit pretty good. And I've always had a compliment like that, so
that's
really,
very good.
Really, it's kind of nice. And my original, not fursuit tail, but my first husky tail that I made, I never actually fully cleaned it outright. I spot washed it, but I never tossed it in the wash until recently. And I did put pictures on Twitter on this, and never been cleaned since, I believe that was 2011. Cleaned it only last fall, because it was sitting around and I looked at it and it was dingy. It looked worse than my fursuit head of Dustin 1.0. So even Dustin 1.0 didn't look that bad. Decided this is going to be curious. I'm going to take a picture of what it looks like now, toss it in the wash it, and then brush it. Let it dry and then see how it turns out. Went from, I would say, from like a 30 or 40%, it was that bad. I mean, I don't think like 10% would be, it was covered in mud.
Yeah.
We left it like that for 10 years, and it looks like that. And that's just ungodly dirty. 30, 40, yeah, it was about 30-40% because it was never truly dirty, but it was filthy as far as covering. And I think it went back to like 90% still. So it actually cleaned it out incredibly well. There's no dinginess or filth on it. It's just the whites and the blues definitely age a little bit in terms of shade.
Vintage Hoosk.
Vintage Hoosk. But the filth was gone, which made me happy. So yeah, so definitely ask someone that you know is a fursuiter on how to clean that has their suit for a very long time, because more likely they know how to clean their suit, and even more terrifying that you ask someone who has been a fursuiter a very long time and you ask them how to clean a suit and they say, well, I don't know how to.
Oh no.
Which there was one local around here that who was a fursuiter for quite a long time, did not know how to clean his fursuit, and he had his suit for like 6, 7, 8 years. Wore it around a lot of meets, but holy moly, it stank.
Oh no.
Not only did it stink, fur was matted, smelled really, really bad, didn't look really well taken care of, and he never knew how to clean a suit because I don't know how the conversation was brought up, and this was going back 5, 6 years ago too.
Okay.
And he just replied, actually, I don't know how to clean my own suit, or I've never cleaned my suit. And that's when we realized, oh, so that's why it stank. It's not that he didn't wash it for a few months or a few years. He didn't wash it, period, which is incredible. So yeah, definitely ask some of the more veteran fursuiters out there, and they can give you a good idea, or even point to their own video or a video of someone else, and that would be a good training video of how to clean your suit.
I want to know that person's reaction once they clean their suit for the first time. I wonder if they would have thought, wow, I didn't know it could even look like that.
And believe it or not, his fursuit colors are tan. It's like a tan brown.
Okay.
And those colors tend to hide filth quite well, but you know when your suit's so dirty that even darker colors show that they're dirty is incredible. The lighter colors, so the lighter green, well, really any lighter color of a color will show filth pretty easily.
Yeah.
Especially white. This character was like a caramel brown and a brown. And over the years, you can tell the difference that, wow, this is getting more filthier and filthier. And then hearing the reaction that, oh, wait, he's never cleaned a suit. Well, that explains why it looks so filthy, because it is filthy. We thought it was just, how the light shines on a fursuit. But, yeah, I hope he's cleaned a suit by now, because, yeah, I try not to hug him so much at cons, because, he's nice, and a few times like, oh, Dustin, you smell so good. So over his smell, he can smell my cleanliness. So at least he can know what it smells like to have hugged a clean smelling fursuit, which everyone wants.
Yeah.
So that means that my cleanliness overpowered his own stench. But it's incredible when you don't clean a fursuit for never. It is going to stink and it is going to look filthy, and holy moly. Yeah, it's best to always clean your fursuit. And I don't believe in over cleaning your fursuit. Yes, you can wash your fursuit every time you wear it, which is kind of an extreme. My fursuit rule is, if I'm going to a lot of fur meets, I may clean my suit. If it's every month, I may clean my suit maybe every 3 or 4 months.
Oh, wow.
Because actually, filth and stink do not act, unless if you sweat and your sweat smells that bad, then it's probably best to wash it every 3 months to be safe anyway.
Okay, because I was actually about to ask how often would you recommend washing a suit? And I thought, honestly, before you mentioned that, I thought it would be like as often as you would wash a set of clothes. Like, oh, I wore this for the day, time to wash it after. But I suppose since, as you said, it might not accumulate filth as much, plus also the whole cleaning process can be tedious.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that. It just, yeah, I can see the 3 to 4 months figure now, but
For fur
that
meats,
that's
yeah,
and I know it also depends a lot on how often you are
in suit.
wearing the suit,
Yeah.
but
And for how long too?
I was not I was not expecting it to be that long. So
It's
interesting information.
it's only that long if it's for like anywhere from a few minutes to 6 hours at a time for fur meats. You could definitely Febreze it. That's one way of cleaning it for a temporary clean. For long-term clean storage. However, if you're fursuiting for a weekend at a convention, I'd recommend cleaning it every convention. If it's, let's say you're going to 3 conventions in a row, you might just be able to get away with one convention, not wash it, Febreze it, go to second convention, wash it after the second one, then the third one you're going to be clean again, and then you start the cycle.
Okay.
But if you're going to a convention every 6 years, or not 6 years,
Oh no.
every 6 months, you're probably better off washing the suit after the con. That way you're good and clean until the next one, or you go into a fur meet or whatnot.
Yeah.
I know some people that wash their suit every damn time, and yeah, you can clean it, but also you're maybe putting on a lot of wear on the suit as far as washing it. Not
Okay.
much wear. It's not noticeable. It doesn't damage it that much. It's just
It is
um,
there.
it's much like washing something far too much. It will show wear.
Yeah.
Much like if you wear something too much, it will wear. It's the same thing. For me, I don't actually stink so much when I sweat. There might be filth in the sweat sometimes because hard working labor, manual labor, Hoosk may have dirty skin even if I wash furiously. I might still be pushing filth out of my skin anyway, so you may as well just wash it here and there. But if I'm only going to fur meets in the area, so MFB or Madison or what have you, I may wear the suit for maybe 2 hours, and I only tend to do spurts of anywhere from 90 minutes to 2 or 3 hours in suit, and then I get out because it gets warm.
Yeah.
I never marathon suit. Not after MFF 2013.
Is that the
That's not GasCon, but
Okay.
it was a year before GasCon. I was in suit for 7 hours once, and of that, I only wanted to be in suit for 6 hours. Turns out my room key stopped working, and it turned out the hotel thought we didn't pay for Saturday night, so they locked us out of the room with my ID in the room. Hello, free up storage space. And luckily, I'd put one of my friend's names on the hotel as well.
Okay.
Turns out he was out of suit with his wallet on him, and I caught him right when he was walking by in the lobby. Say, "Hey, do you have your wallet? Because we're locked out of the room, and we need to see an ID." Because I told him, "Can you at least unlock the rooms so that I can show who I actually am?" And they wouldn't do that.
What the heck?
So I've been pretty anal about not suiting for far too long, and at least have other people have other room keys. And also, if someone's out in suits, always have the wallet with them just in case.
Yeah.
So,
And I know for me that'll be kind of interesting. I am looking to have a pouch on my suit because Roo. Now I know I could have my items in my pockets on the clothes I'm wearing under the suit. I'm not gonna suit naked. I don't want to do that.
oh no. Okay. So as far as what to wear while you're in suit, obviously, underwear. Yes.
Please.
Um, I forget if it's hot gear or cold gear. Curtin would actually know, so I don't want to say anything yet. There is a cold gear and there's hot gear, and they're both separate. One of them actually is good for cold weather sports that keeps you warm,
Okay.
and then one of them is for hot weather sports that keeps you cooler. For some reason, there's a difference between the two that work. I don't know. But definitely wear a balaclava. Helps contain the sweat so it doesn't go into your fursuit head so much. And it does actually help contain the filth in the balaclava.
Yeah. Probably also containing my hair too, because
yes.
I have crazy hair.
And you want to wear an undershirt and Under Armour pants. Because it's nice to wick the sweat however way you can. And the good way to dry stuff up fast between fursuiting outings or whatnot at a con, spray 50-50 alcohol on it to not only contain the smells or the sweats, mostly the smells, but I don't smell so much when I sweat, so that's not so much an issue for me.
Are you talking about like isopropyl alcohol?
Yes.
That is the universal cleaner.
Yes, and it's the universal dryer. You spray anything, which I was considering spraying your hoodie with that. Then I realized it's way too wet that I'm better off drying it. But if it's lightly damp, you put a fan in front of it and you spray it with 50-50, it will dry quite quick. Because isopropyl alcohol dries stuff out fast.
It's also magic.
It is also
Use that for cleaning anything electronics based, and it is the true magic eraser. Mr. Clean has nothing on this.
Right. I would recommend in wearing spandex type underwear because you want a bit of some breathe. Anything that contains heat, you're going to feel it wherever it is. If you wear an ordinary t-shirt, it's going to contain a lot of heat. It's going to contain the sweat, but you're going to feel a lot more warmer because it doesn't breathe so well. The Under Armour shirt and pants will help you breathe better, which will make not only a cooler fursuiting experience, but also make a better fursuiting experience. Always, it's nice to keep an extra set just in case you wanted to change out, get into another suit right away. If you have extra stuff to wear, you can pull the wet stuff off, have it dry, put the other fursuit up, get in a second fursuit with second set of Under Armour, and it feels like you're driving another new car for a while. You could technically go from one fursuit to another with the same gear. You'll just feel wet, but the suit you're getting into is dry. So that's kind of a weird feeling, but
yeah,
eventually the suit will get a little bit wet. It's not sopping wet.
Right.
You can feel a little bit of damp along the back or in other places that you might sweat, but never excessive enough to where you're dripping wet. Because I've never felt, except for maybe one or two fursuiters, that are dripping wet. And I don't even, like, not dripping wet like they got out of the shower, but dripping wet like they've been out of the shower for a while. So.
Now it's good to hear the types of clothing that are recommended to wear while in suit, because since I used to and do run and bike a lot of my wardrobe sounds like it would already be suitable to that type of thing.
Right. And then I would recommend for socks, just pretty much short ankle height socks is just good enough. Because you know what? Your feet are going to get warm in any way because it's covered in foam.
Yeah.
It does not matter what kind of socks. You can wear tube socks for extra sweat wicking protection, but you're going to be warm in those areas.
Let me get my wool socks for...
Oh my god. Oh, I don't want to ever do that. I could just to see how it feels like, but holy cow, my feet would be on fire.
Yeah.
But ankle length socks, good enough. You could go with slightly higher or even tube socks or crew cut socks. I don't know.
There's so many different types of socks. I should probably actually start wearing ankle socks. A lot of my fellow runners, when I was still in high school, wore ankle socks, but I could never get used to them because all my life I'm so used to long.
Right. Normally for tube socks, very, very cold weathers, half calf length socks for temperate weathers, whatnot.
Stocking like socks.
Oh my god. Well, actually, if you're really going to be cold, yeah, you may as well. And then ankle cut socks in warm weather, because, yeah, you want something to wick up sweat. Yeah, it's being in shoes without socks just feels nasty to me.
Yeah, and can be kind of dangerous to your feet just
Yeah.
from the friction of everything.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can definitely get what you call it,
Blister.
blisters. Oh yeah.
They
Um,
blist. Whatever that means.
they blist. Um, let's see. Yeah, there is sort of a learning curve to fursuiting, but if you talk to someone who's done it a long time, that learning curve does not have to be very long, meaning several months instead of several years.
Right.
Whereas I'm still learning on how to better my fursuiting experience. It'd be more helpful to teach new fursuiters how to get over a lot of the humps that I've had to experience first over time that took me a long time to learn, then, oh, now that I know all this stuff, I can prevent a lot of people from doing the wrong things, make their fursuiting experience so much better, and make it a more fun and easy experience. Now, I will say this. Ever since I stopped drinking at cons, I will still drink at home or at, furry outings,
Yeah.
fur meets and whatnot, but at conventions, I've gone full dry. I do not bring any alcohol. I don't drink any alcohol. I want to enjoy my con experience like in the good old days before I did that. Not only did I enjoy my weekends, I remember a lot more, but my fursuiting got so much easier because, as we all know, isopropyl alcohol dries stuff pretty quick. Alcohol, it's on its own dehydrates you.
Oh no.
And when you sweat, you're sweating out liquid water, and you're replacing that water with booze, which means you're going to be going to be very, very warm, because you can only sweat so much after a while.
Right.
And when you don't have anything to sweat, you get warm. With so much alcohol, which is why a lot of people get in trouble with this, whether through alcohol poisoning or just feeling way too warm in suit, they may get heat stroke, is either A, they simply weren't drinking enough water. I would say drink about a bottle's worth of water before you suit. That way you are fully hydrated.
Yeah.
Definitely room temperature water. You should not drink cold water. It's nice to have cold water when you're out of suit, but when you just got out of suit, you do not want cold water. You want just room temperature water. So that's one reason. And the other is people who drink way too much and then getting into suit, then realize they're in trouble because now their body's not cooling off as it should. Ever since I stopped drinking at cons, my fursuiting experience went tenfold into better positive avenues that was actually kind of nice.
That's
And
good
plus,
to hear.
too, you might be sweating out the alcohol out of your skin, and that gets in your suit, so your suit gets filthy in that way, in my
Oh
regard.
no, booze fursuit.
Booze suits.
No.
So in this case, your sweat's going to be more cleaner drinking water than it is with alcohol, with whatever that's going through with the alcohol. You're sweating that out. It's not a very effective means of cooling.
Yeah.
You could drink Gatorade. I mean, it's still water. It's just flavored water with sugars and all that other stuff. As long as you don't drink alcohol before you get in the suit, you're going to have fun. Probably the electrolytes, I don't know too much about chemistry, science, or whatnot. I'm sure that's got to be good as well.
Yeah.
I think you're better off drinking the Gatorade after you get out of suit. You should drink water before you get in suit. Then after you get out of suit, drink the Gatorade to replenish.
Yeah, that's the
So-
recommendation I had when I used to run a lot more too, was save the Gatorade for after, just for the replenishment. Otherwise,
Right.
before, your body wants water because it is made for water.
Right. And with
Now-
Gatorade, it wants to quench water too, because it's made in a way that makes you want to drink more Gatorade or more water. Specifically more Gatorade, because they want to do that so that you buy more Gatorade. So,
Well, they do that enough with how good it tastes, even though I haven't had Gatorade in oh god, years.
yeah. Or it's like having McDonald's fries. They make it salty enough to where that you want more fries.
Not anymore.
Oh, yeah?
They need, well, I mean, I have McDonald's once a year now, and usually it's to remember why I don't want McDonald's, but
Their fries go so stale.
their
so
fries,
fast.
their fries are no longer salty. It's
Really?
Well,
Oh.
there is salt, but not enough that I would consider
You want to crave for more
like,
fries.
yeah, it's not sufficient.
That's amazing.
But yeah, I suppose one more thing with being sober while in suit is you are safer because you are more aware of your surroundings.
That too.
I've only had one opportunity to be in suit. That was at First Square 2020 when, okay, even though it wasn't exactly a fursuit, it was more kind of like a kigu plus a suit head plus
Okay.
suit paws, suit hands. Um, I was in Zedian's Derpy Blue Dragon suit, and definitely with the amount of perception that is cut off
Mm-hmm.
by the head, I think it is definitely good to be sober in suit, even if it's just solely to be more aware of what's going on. And now, kind of on that topic, I know suit handlers are a thing. Like, you kind of have someone just kind of
It's helpful to
spotting you.
have suit handlers. It's not a requirement, but it's nice to have them when they are there.
Okay, I was just gonna say, are there, like, what situations would you recommend to have someone spotting you?
If you got really bad visibility in general, like some suits have great visibility, some don't. If you're really blind as a bat, where I can get around just fine, and my vision without glasses, because I don't wear glasses or contacts while I suit, because that's just one reason for something to go wrong.
Right.
Um, and they fog up during winter too, so it's just to have clear vision in suit is not that important. It's just so as long as you know what's in front of you, that's all that really matters.
Yeah.
Really, fursuit handlers, they're great for any reason. Help you get around and whatnot, and that bug is still flying around, and
Curse you.
he wants the light.
1,000 blades upon your soul.
Um, to me, anything's a good advantage when it comes to having a fursuit handler. I think the number one thing is getting someone to say, "Hey, can you get me a glass of water with a straw?" And that becomes so much hard. Actually, no, it becomes so much easier knowing that someone's going to come back with a cup of water and a straw that they will help feed it through your mouth, through your muzzle to your inner mouth, like an alien, and sip on water.
You
And
know,
then that way you can be like a jet fighter in the air, being fueled in the air by a giant tanker aircraft. I like to think of it like that. It's like you can go full-on tanker aircraft style refueling of water by never taking the suit off and literally take a cup at a time. And I never drink more than a cup,
that's a good idea.
but I always drink at least a cup. Maybe if I'm suit, maybe once every half an hour or more. Not any frequent, but just enough to keep you going.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is. Like, when I'd run half marathons, that's kind of how it was too. Kind of how the spacing of water tables is like, is just get your cup every, like, half an hour or so.
And you made another mention
Well,
about new suitors.
Usually it's probably a bit more often than that, but still the general concept still hangs up.
Right.
I don't know. I can't help but just kind of see parallels of when I would do long distance running with
Technically the same
a lot
thing.
of stuff with suiting. It's a strenuous activity.
Yep. And you're still going to need water regardless.
And then
Um,
I also ask about the whole handler or spotter thing, because one thing I do kind of want to do once I do have Roo suit is I kind of want to do some public suiting,
mhm.
just kind of around
Yes,
Milwaukee, just
that's-
mainly to kind of, because, screw it.
I would
I've had enough time taken away from me. I want to be silly, but something like that I could definitely see wanting to have
Yes.
another person for.
I think honestly, if anything, you don't need a spotter at a con, but you need a spotter out in the world, because you need someone normal to be with a fursuiter, so that people can also act normal around it. Especially Milwaukee, I would not want a fursuit alone, unless I have either another person or another fursuit, and even still, it gets sketchy. That people start to ask questions or getting. You're better off having a handler out in the world anyway.
Okay.
So in that regard, yes, you want a handler for the outside world. At a con, you don't really need a handler. It's optional. If you can get a dedicated handler, perfect. If you can find a fursuit buddy, you both can be each other's handlers. So in that case, that works both ways.
Just get each other a collar with a leash. It's like we're walking each other.
So, number one thing about fursuiting, and you made a good mention. You decided to wear someone else's suit for a change.
Well, for
a con, but
yeah.
you got the experience before you decided to get the fursuit, which is a good thing. So I've seen so many people who get a fursuit for the very first time, never actually wearing one before, and then realize it was way more than they expected it, and they never wore their suit much, which tends to be a waste of their own money, which is unfortunate, and they don't have any enjoyment wearing the suit, even though it might be adorable and cute. They don't get the enjoyment of it as they thought they would.
Yeah.
I would say one thing. Know any of your closest friends who are willing to let you, who is willing to let you wear their head. If anything, 80% of all the heat is going to be to your face. The bodysuit, there's a bit of warmth, but then again, I'm a reenactor, so I'm used to being warm anyway. But I think if you can survive 30 minutes or an hour in suit, or while wearing a head, and you can say, hey, I can do a couple more hours of this, you're probably going to be okay with wearing a fursuit. If you are sweating up a storm in 15 minutes and you can't handle it, that's a sign that says, hey, this is what fursuiting is like. You might maybe do an hour max before you're done, or you may not be an individual who's probably up for fursuiting.
Right.
And consider that maybe fursuiting is not meant for you. That's always the possibility.
Like, I know for me, I've been interested in suiting for a long time, but the two barriers I had before, wanting to seriously start looking into it were, one, I wanted to try one first to see if reality matched expectation.
Good.
And then two was to have a place to myself to live. I mean, well, I've been moved out for a while, and so at least both of those are satisfied now, but those are the things I just kind of kept thinking of. It's like I need to make sure these prerequisites are satisfied before, making a decision to spend a considerable sum on something that may or may not give me the happiness that I thought it would. And I think it will after the experiences I've had.
You have done it in the right way as far as wanting to understand something is to have a test drive before you fully buy into it, because nothing is worse than watching someone who bought a suit from a really reputable fursuit maker, which may cost you $4,000 and may have a 2-year waiting list, and then by the time you finally get yours, wear it, and then realize it was a waste of your time and money. That is sad, because when you really think about it, $4,000 is still a good chunk of change.
Right.
And now you've got that much money sitting in a tote or in your closet collecting dust of your own character now that you have no idea what to do with, because you can't sell your suit to anyone else. You can sell your suit, but the problem is now you've got someone else who's being you, which to some people is a problem. I know some people who've sold off their suits without any worry. So now they have two similarly, like you have one person who looks exactly like the original, but it's like, well, I sold the suit, so it's not technically mine, but it's no longer me being... That suit is not associated with me. It's still confusing to a lot of people.
Right.
Technically, in my eyes, if you sell your suit as is unaltered to another person, I like to think you're literally selling not the rights to your character, but you're literally selling your character to be used by someone else, knowing that they're going to be you because people are going to call them by the original suit name.
Right.
Unless you do extensive modifications to radically change it to a degree that it is no longer the original character, meaning replacing some parts of the fursuit body with new colors that is totally different from the original, maybe doing a few changes to the fursuit head, maybe.
Okay.
Then you can get away with that without having the original owner getting pissed off that now people are calling him same name as you. But yeah, best to best to know what you're getting yourself into first before you dive deep, because it may be I don't know if it would be a false economy, but it'd just be a false representation of what you'd expect things to be.
And then you'd have your hopes would be crushed then when you get that,
Yeah.
and then realize it's not for you. For me, I wait until that, and I realize, hey, I can wear this for a long period of time.
Yeah.
I can have fun, just being silly in suit and all that, and that's when I realized I could do it. But I know not everyone is like that, so definitely a good idea to, try before you buy.
And exactly, and if it's something that you can wear by someone else, the idea is heat. It's not so much on visibility, because that will change between maker and maker.
Right.
Sometimes between suit and suit from one maker. Some suits from one maker might have better visibility or better ventilation than the other. So really it's a crapshoot of how it's designed from the beginning.
Yeah.
But really it's about how long can you last in the suit without you feeling the need to pull it off. I say if you can, now my test, if you can go 30 minutes before you need to pop the head, then you're doing okay physically. If you have to pop your head almost immediately, unless it's 90 degrees with a 95% humidity, which is awful. So I'm not going to fault anyone for not lasting that long and that kind of stuff, because I've suited in that and it was awful.
Oh my god, how I would barely even want to exist.
It's like walking through a pool.
That I've had a running meet canceled due to insane humidity and temperature combo before. Like, to suit in something like that would be...
Well, that's not that I wanted to. It was for the fursuit parade and fursuit photo, so... that was insane, and I survived, and almost immediately I took my head off when I got either to my room or to the headless lounge. Oh, also, too, you're going to a con, you want to take your head off. Yes, you can go to the fursuit headless lounge. No, I would not suggest you putting your head to dry off on one of the fursuit drying tubes. Because you know why?
Everyone else has used it.
Yes. And while they are promising everyone that they're going to clean the tubes with disinfectant wipes so that the next air tube is going to be clean for the next person to use, which is always a nice thing, they might miss one. That is how con crud begins. Have you ever noticed there are only two types of people that get con crud at a con? The partiers that drink from out of the bottle and they share bottles, they get con crud, that's how it's spread, or if you're a fursuiter, or both. I noticed that only these two groups of people at a fur con get con crud to the extreme.
Interesting.
Because A, you're sharing bottles between person to person, so you're sharing your germs that way. Or B, you went to the fursuit headless lounge, you use one of the tubes that wasn't cleaned by someone, you put your head on, and then you feel crummy afterwards.
Oh no.
That was IFC 2014 for me. I was sick Saturday night at the con. For the first time ever, I decided to go to bed at around 10 o'clock because I felt so out of it. I felt so pissed off because it's like, God damn it, I got con crud now. And I'm having a good time, but that night, nothing else interesting was going to go on. All of my friends were out and about doing their own thing or in bed too because,
right,
their body clock wants it. So I figured, you know what, I can afford this one night at a convention that I can go to bed to sleep it off. Hoping that by the end of the week I'd feel better because knowing me, I'd have it for a while.
Yeah.
No, it turns out it was a 12-hour cold. I went to bed at around 10 or 11. By around 9 or 10 next day, feeling fine.
That is awesome to hear that the rest of your weekend was not ruined by that.
Yeah, and it happened to be during a time that I ended up sleeping it through anyway, so it's not like I was existing with it while enjoying the con. And I was staying till Monday anyway, so I had all of Sunday to enjoy my day. So literally...
I'm very glad that worked out for you then, because that would be terrible if, you spent so much time planning this out in advance,
to
arranging transportation, and then not be able to enjoy it.
Yeah. At that point, it was just like, This is gonna suck, not only for the rest of the con, but for the rest of the week. No, that was not only one of the quickest colds I've ever gone through. FurCon con crud is a legendary that is some of the more stronger flus or colds or whatnot that one can experience. That people get con crud tend to have it for a week or two. That's how strong some of the con crud from FurCons can get. I was one of the lucky ones to only have it for 12 hours at a convention.
You zoomed through it.
Not only did I get it from a convention, I didn't have it when I left the convention. That's so rare.
Right.
And in early of 2020, some furs thought they may have had COVID long before COVID was even a thing from further confusion in California. There was a huge bug of illness that happened at that convention that people were knocked on their ass for 2 weeks with the same symptoms as COVID, but didn't require any hospitalization or whatnot. It was just simply a really bad flu.
Okay.
And may have been one of the last big flus for con crud that, and then COVID happened, and then at that point cons just stopped happening. People were like saying how bad that, and everyone on furry Twitter around January of 2020 was talking about how bad that con crud was, that everyone who had it knew what was going on because they all had the same symptoms.
Okay.
Then when COVID came about and people started to know and understand its symptoms and, how long and this and that, then they all started thinking, did we have COVID before it was even called COVID?
What was there like a 2-week waiting period between the con and when people were getting sick then?
I'm not sure, but
because I feel
when
like
people get sick, they normally get sick almost immediately during or after the con.
Okay, because I know of course, this disease typically has a 10 to 14 day incubation period
before it takes off.
Yeah, so I feel like that would also be another major sign of whether or not it really was that, because yes, the virus has been spreading for months before it was declared a pandemic. It's been found in sewage samples across the world from late 2019, but
so actually
that would
may have been it.
Yeah, I feel like the incubation period would be a major thing though.
Which, coincidentally, I was sick for 3 weeks with a really bad cold. That I didn't have trouble breathing, but it just kicked me on my ass for 3 weeks in December of 2019. But it did not involve breathing issues, though. That I did not have. And none of these other furries had breathing issues either. It was a cold that just kicked their ass.
Yeah, and I suppose you have a large enough sample size where you could confidently say whether or not it was that or not.
And I don't think it really was, but it had similar symptoms, but it didn't have the respiratory issues that came with COVID, so.
Yeah.
And same with me, with what happened in December of the year before. Yeah, just absolutely kicked my ass. And that was the last time I've been sick. And since then, never been sick since, which this is the longest I've gone without being sick, which I'm proud.
That's
but
very
also,
good.
Considering what's going on in the world, it's definitely a good thing.
Yes.
But yeah, if you're going to a fursuit headless lounge, put your fursuit head, put it on a chair. You're going to have to suffer through it by putting it back on later. But you're not going to get sick. Yeah, it's going to feel weird to have cold sweat go back on your warm head, but you know what? You're avoiding the risk of getting something that someone has that may not know that they have.
Or I wonder, maybe the convention could provide disinfectant wipes within the suit lounge, but I suppose that would probably
that way people do
dry up
do
quick.
their own.
Yeah. I feel that would be a very good thing too, just to kind of ensure yourself that the place is sanitary.
Normally, cons have a con staff member that is at the Headless Lounge anyway for that reason. But yeah, to offer it to those that want to do it manually themselves to make sure.
Yeah.
Me?
This darn bug.
Yeah. I don't trust those drying tubes enough that still, inside the tubes, even though it's blowing air,
Right.
you don't know if they're incubating something else as well.
Oh
So,
God.
frankly, I just don't believe in them after that time. That's the last time I've ever used a tube. And it was very early on in my fursuiting, I wouldn't say career, but my fursuiting days. And ever since then, I never believed in them. It's like I would rather go to my room and do it myself manually, dry off my head there, the safety of my room where I know the parameters, and I know that I'm not sick.
Yes.
Whereas going to a headless lounge, yeah, you can drink some water there. Yeah, you can put your fursuit head down on a chair while you hobnob with the other fursuiters and whatnot.
Yeah. Or Russell in the case of me.
Yeah.
I've, I, I got rustled by a fursuiter in the headless lounge.
But as far as like tubes, I don't believe in it so much as I used to, just because I got sick that one time and got lucky with it. I don't want to push the envelope again.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
I still got sick afterwards after cons because I went to room parties, drank out of the bottle with other furs and whatnot because it seemed like the cool thing to do, and then realize I'm only putting myself in it sick.
Yeah.
And ever since I stopped drinking out of bottles, not only at cons but at fur meets and whatnot, it's like, yeah, I'm not sick. And the only times I did get sick was sharing a wine bottle with Giga, and I think he may have had a cold at the time that he didn't know. And days later says, "Do you feel ill?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got a cold." "Oh, sorry, I probably gave that to you because I'm feeling down with something too." It's like, oh, okay. But I have to keep reminding myself I have to not drink out of the bottle of some of these. Because we were like going to drink a bottle of wine together because we decided to want to get shit-faced together. And like a moron, I broke my own rules saying, okay, I can drink out of this bottle, thinking I may get sick. And I did. Not alcohol poisoning, but I got sick from a cold that ended up lasting for about a week and a half or something
Oh,
like that.
that's terrible.
Yeah.
And I just realized, oh God, there's probably people who have gotten whooping cough from a convention.
I'm
That
very certain.
that would be terrible. And like I've had whooping cough before. Yes, I am vaccinated to it. I just happened to be unlucky. But oh my goodness, that was a terrible 3 months.
Oof. Yeah, that does not sound fun at all. I mean, I think the good thing that why we're talking about this, and for anyone listening, is good enough, not just an incentive to know what you're getting yourself into, but just good, helpful advice from someone who's been fursuiting for nearly a decade now. Just stuff to look at and look into, think about, and investigate on how to suit, really how to just get around in suit. Not just physically getting around, but just knowing the ins and outs of some of the things that there is a learning curve to. And I'd rather just tell you out flat out what to do, what to avoid, what not to do, and how to better your fursuiting experience. That's just how I kind of see that. Yeah, beyond that, if you get a few rips and tears through seams of your fursuit, you could take it back to your fursuit maker, but if that's not an option because they're so far away, find someone who knows how to sew, which is actually quite easy to do, or someone like me who knows how to sew.
You do.
You ask that person to help fix your suit, and they will either, depending on their mood, will likely teach you how to also fix your fursuit again if this ever happened, in case they don't happen to be around to fix it again. If you're at a con where they're not there but you have a hole, you can patch it up with pretty good efficiency with only a few minutes of your time. It doesn't take long either.
Okay.
There's no magic to sewing. It's just basic chain stitch. And sometimes it's nice to just reinforce some stitches too all the way around, so you know that one seam is never going to pop again.
Okay.
And you just sew stuff back on when they pop. Like my suits, they tend to pop seams, which for no reason. I don't know, it's just how it was made.
Hoosk cannot be contained.
Hoosk cannot be contained. And what I end up doing is I start from the end of one seam, and I do the whole damn seam all over again. I keep the original stitching in it.
Okay.
I just resew it, and then the part that's been bust it open, and then just keep going up and up and up until I'm at a junction where other pieces meet or that. And sometimes some seams don't have any stress to them that they'll never pop, and then some may pop more often. So
Right, yeah, I suppose it also depends on the location of it.
yeah. So yeah, there's always some learning curve to fursuiting, and some of it can easily be learned quite quickly and quite efficiently. And basic stitch repair, anyone can do. Maybe some more complicated fixes like fursuit feet or heads might be done by someone who knows what they're doing. But fursuit paws, tails, and body, anyone can fix it. Literally pretty simple. The most complicated things on a fursuit are the head and feet paws. Beyond that, the rest should be pretty relatively simple. So,
Okay.
yeah, there is some degree of knowledge on how to fix some stuff, but others pretty easy. Doesn't require too much. So, and we are back at it again at 2 hours in, which this is actually kind of fun. Yeah, we talked about technology, we talked about fursuits, and then there's stuff. I don't know. I don't really have too much thought on what else to really talk about.
Yeah, I'm not sure either right now.
We could probably just call it a night because it is 9 o'clock right now.
Yeah, I think we might be good on content.
Yeah. We got plenty of new stuff that we have not really mentioned before on the podcast, so it's kind of nice. Although, considering stuff, as you know, I am the Hoosk. And if you're local around here, I run the local bonfire meet that's been going on for 5 years now. Probably one of the better local events there is in the southeast Wisconsin region. I'm not being biased. It's just...
It's true.
It is... Hearing from everyone from 4 different states, 1 international country, and a whole bunch of locals, people are pretty happy with what I run. And I'm pretty proud of running one of the most favorite meets in this state. I say one of them because there's other good meets out there. But in this area, it is by far maybe the most anticipated of the whole region of this part of the state. And probably couldn't be duplicated just because just the atmosphere here is just so nice. But with pandemic, it's not easy to really do. You kind of have to put them on hold because it may not be safe to do right now until, things can get better. But until then, this summer, and I was talking with Lilia about this, is I might even consider doing a bonfire cast. Just to do it in the backyard, invite a few friends over, include their icons in the corner, and just kind of talk about stuff outside. Considering that this podcast technically does not need to have Wi-Fi, I could record it practically anywhere. Yeah, I would like more audience participation, maybe something to do in the future here and there, but really the whole purpose of this podcast is that it can get done anywhere it needs to be. In the backyard, which may have still Wi-Fi connection, but just in case.
Right.
It's going to be done like normal. Although it would be nice to have a video feed of us outside as well. We're going to see how well that can work. Something to perhaps look into for the summer, because I would not mind doing that a Saturday when I'm off work. Invite a few furs over at a time. It's not meant to be a huge event, but people that I think would enjoy to be on a podcast and just talk about stuff. And just kind of enjoy the weather, enjoy the bonfire, and just kind of chill out. And probably something to do to start early in the day so that the whatever you call this, the video cam?
Webcam.
The webcam. I forgot about that word for a moment. Probably have this meet start up in the afternoon where there's still light. That way, there's very little issue when it gets a bit darker that there wouldn't be any issue for video exposure as far as being able to pick anything up in the background.
Yeah.
Because I don't want this computer to be too close to a fire, because otherwise, this is my computer. This is not a podcast computer where it's specifically meant for this. This is literally my workhorse. So I don't want it damaged by heat. But it'd be close enough to all of us to where that we can be visible, but far away from fire, that it's pretty safe. And have the microphone, which has good enough length of cable that we can position it to be among the circle of people to pick up enough of the voices if possible. So I think that'd be a fun thing to do. I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Well, I can't have a bonfire, and my bonfires no longer will occur at my place. It's just a bit news, but I still have some announcements to make, but that's, until things get better, and until then I'm going to keep things a bit of a secret. Because, sometimes venues might get taken over by other competing events that I do not want, because, frankly, I have the longest running bonfire meet in the state, and I refuse to give away my new location to those who will replace me, because furries out there in the state are dumb enough to do something like that, so I'm just saying that. But until then, I would not mind having a bonfire cast here and there throughout the summer.
That'd be fun.
Maybe even once a month, but hey, if we can do it a few times a month or so, or just to have fun in the backyard. Just finally do a video cast, so to speak, to see us as well. Really, my studio is my room, and it's either sometimes a mess or really not good for really making video because it's just my room. But something like outside, seeing nature, seeing outside, seeing fire, see our faces, I think it'd just be cool for that. So
we do exist.
We do exist. So with that, I have nothing. I don't have any other news to say, but something just to think about for the summer to kind of expect. And also, too, we mentioned about photo shoots out in the city and whatnot. If you are a Wisconsin local or a Milwaukee local and you listen to this podcast, and if you're interested in one day wanting to join me with a few other furs to go out into the downtown parts of the city of Milwaukee or Madison or Kenosha or any other city with a downtown area that we can take some good
West
pictures
Dallas.
with. West Dallas. Hell, even West Dallas.
Yeah.
There's still some good parts about West Dallas that we can take pictures of. Let me know on Twitter or on Telegram. It's the same name, Dustin DaHusky. Contact me there. And when we organize something, I'll let you in the loop. So, extra credit points if you use a film camera, but if you have a digital camera that you'd rather use, you can most certainly use that instead. It's something fun that I like to get more furs out to do, kind of like my disc golf group. It's outside, it's relatively safe. Yeah, you can wear a mask, but you're really outside, the wind's going to be out there, it's going to circulate and churn the air. You don't have to worry about stale air for the most part, because if you're going to be outside, there's not too much to worry about. It's when you're indoors is where you got to worry about. But.
Right. Remember, there is no significant upturn in COVID-19 cases from the summer 2020 protests.
Which was fantastic. That's right. That is absolutely mind-blowing that I thought perhaps there might be an uptick, and there wasn't.
Yeah,
no one ever talked about it.
The
either.
outdoor risk is extremely low, and even then, over the summer, we should probably not need to worry about this anymore anyway if the rate of vaccination continues.
Right. And I'm hoping to get my... that stupid bug is still flying around. I'm hoping to get vaccinated in the next 2, 3, or 4 weeks. Knowing how things are, if it's something I can schedule on my own so I don't have to call a day off, because I really don't want to, especially with a company that doesn't give any personal time off for a year. and that alone would have to mean using a vacation day, which I'd rather not ever use. So I'd rather use on a day I'm off, use up my days off as my time off to do stuff like this. And I would rather do it on a Saturday that I can recover if need be.
Right.
So, but still trying to push for my own vaccination, my own Hoosk shots. But until then, I'm just going to have to keep looking around for an open schedule that I can get my shot without having to wait too fucking long, because it's incredible that there's appointments available at Walgreens in my local town. Okay, so they're available, alright. I try to click on the link, and the link actually doesn't do anything. The mouse recognizes that it's a link you can click, but when you click it, it literally does nothing. So
Yeah, a lot of appointment times fill up quickly. When I was scheduling my vaccination, I actually had to put it out to a Sunday rather than the Saturday that I wanted, because I fill out all my information just to get to the end and be told that time slot is no longer available.
Oh, wow. Which, if you're able to get your vaccine at a time that you can still do it, hey, why not? But with me, especially bus driving, I'd rather not want to drive while feeling ill.
Right.
Especially when you're doing it for 10 hours a day, which I really do not want to do if I need to. If I can do it on a weekend that I can just recover if need be, that'd be perfect.
Like, I had a lot of illness-like side effects with my shot and was basically out the rest of the day after getting my shot.
And then I've heard some people are out for almost 2 days just because of how hard it hits them, which they say after the third day you might feel a little crummy, but you're feeling a lot better.
After the third day, you are risen again.
Yeah, so. But yeah, that's just kind of other stuff to kind of talk about, so. Anyway, I think this was a good time.
It was.
So, I'm going to be signing off. So this is your host of the zoominghooskpodcast, Dustin DaHusky.
And this is Lilia Roo.
Guest star. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. I think this is the 5th episode so far at this point from this date that I have yet to upload. But I'm hoping to get stuff uploaded quite quickly so that you can catch up to the last 5 episodes, because I've been a bit lazy, but also a bit busy, but mostly lazy and also busy.
Lazy Hoosk and busy Hoosk.
Lazy and busy Hoosk.
And the many facets of Hoosk.
And many facets of Hoosk. But we'll definitely upload a few tonight before I go to bed, because my work sent to me a voicemail, and I want to make sure what time I have to get up. They were a bit late today about it, but hopefully it's not too fucking early or too fucking late, because any earlier than 6 is stupid, and anything past 8 is kind of stupid, but it is what it is. So, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Catch you next time.
Yeah.